The exile begins. The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with voices. Thousands of alien delegates spoke at once, their words mixing into anger and fear. At the center of the hall, a giant display showed Earth, small and blue, shining against the darkness of space. The leader of the council raised his long hand and demanded silence. He spoke slowly, his voice cold. He said that humanity had become too dangerous, too wild, too unpredictable to remain in the Council of Stars. He said humans had broken treaties, fought wars without permission, and used technology in ways that frightened the other races. His final words cut like a blade. Earth is exiled. Humanity is no longer welcome among us. A silence fell, only broken by whispers of approval from alien leaders. To them, it was done. The exile was the final judgment. On Earth, the news arrived like a storm. Screens across the planet showed the decision. Some cried, some shouted in anger, some stood frozen, unable to believe what they heard. Leaders of Earth gathered in secret rooms, their faces pale and tense. One leader slammed his hand on the table. "They cannot do this. We built the colonies, we fought their wars, and now they throw us away like dust." But others only shook their heads. They whispered that humanity had no choice. The Council controlled the trade routes. The Council controlled the stargates. Without them, Earth would be cut off, forgotten, left to die slowly in the streets of cities. People gathered in angry crowds. They shouted at the skies. Some threw stones at giant screens showing alien faces. Others held each other and wept. The young looked at the stars with burning eyes. The old lowered their heads, feeling betrayal after decades of loyalty. In one small town, a cadet named Elena stood on the rooftop of her home. She looked at the night sky, her fists tight. She whispered to herself, "If they cast us out, then we will find our own way." Her voice was quiet, but it carried the fire of every broken dream. Days passed, and the exile became real. Starships were denied fuel at alien stations. Colonies beyond Earth were abandoned. Human diplomats were forced out of council halls. Entire fleets were ordered to return home. The once proud human banner was torn down from worlds that had called them allies in space. Human warships lined up at the edge of the Sol system. Their captains received the same message. "Stand down, return to Earth. You have no rights beyond your own sky." Some obeyed with heavy hearts, some cursed, others swore they would not bow. Back on Earth, hunger began to grow. Supplies from distant colonies no longer arrived. Medicines and rare materials became scarce. Factories slowed. Ships stood empty at docks. Humanity seemed broken. And yet, beneath the surface, something was changing. Engineers worked in hidden workshops. Scientists met in dark rooms. Soldiers trained in silence. Ordinary workers whispered to one another, a secret thought rising inside them. They think exile is our end, but it will be our beginning. Families gathered at night around firelight, telling stories of how humans had always survived the impossible. They remembered the cold winters of the past, the plagues, the wars, the disasters. Every time, humanity had stood again, stronger, harder, sharper. This memory became a shield, but fear still lingered. People worried about the children, about the future, about being alone in a galaxy filled with enemies. In one meeting of leaders, the arguments grew so loud that walls shook. One side said to surrender, to beg forgiveness. The other side shouted no, to build again, to fight if needed. The argument ended with silence because no one yet knew which path was possible. Outside, the world grew restless. Riots spread, banners of protest rose, and through it all, the image of Earth in the night sky seemed to glow brighter. The world was small compared to the galaxy, but inside that small world, billions of hearts began to burn with the same fire. And then, a strange message was received. Deep space antennas picked up a signal, weak and broken, but carrying patterns not seen before. It was not from the Council. It was not from allies. It came from somewhere far beyond, somewhere unknown. Scientists studied it, politicians feared it, soldiers wanted to chase it. But to the people, it was a sign. Maybe exile was not the end. Maybe it was the key to something greater. Elena, the young cadet, heard about the signal. She looked once again at the stars, her voice stronger this time. "They exiled us, but we will rise. We will build something greater than they ever dreamed." The wind carried her words into the night. The stars seemed to listen, and for the first time since the exile, hope began to shine. The ashes of despair. Earth was silent at first, but soon the silence turned heavy. The exile was no longer just a word. It was a wound. Colonies stopped sending supplies. Ships stood empty. and the people of Earth felt the weight of hunger and fear pressing on their shoulders. Factories in the cities slowed, machines went quiet because rare metals no longer arrived. Medicines that once came from distant systems vanished. Hospitals filled with patients but had no cure. The once bright world felt abandoned, like a planet left to rot in darkness. In the streets, protests grew larger. People carried signs, shouting against the Galactic Council. Some demanded war, some demanded surrender. Leaders stood at the center, unable to decide, their voices clashing louder than the cries outside. One leader whispered, "We must bow, we must beg to return." Another slammed the table and shouted, "No, if we crawl back now, humanity will never rise again." The room fell silent because no one truly knew which path was safe, and yet, in the middle of despair, there were sparks, secret sparks. In abandoned warehouses, engineers worked on hidden machines. Broken ships were rebuilt with whatever scraps they could find. Children of workers brought food to their parents who refused to stop building. One day, they whispered, "One day these ships will fly again." Scientists met in basements and under mountains, carrying blueprints too dangerous to show in daylight. They studied the strange signal that had been captured. The signal came from deep space, from an unknown region far beyond the Council's borders. It carried a map, but broken, incomplete, like pieces of a puzzle lost in shadows. Still, the scientists stared at it with burning eyes. One old scientist muttered, "This is not just noise, it is a door they do not want us to open." In training camps, young soldiers drilled without rest. They had no promise of battle, no promise of survival, but they trained as if tomorrow would bring war. Old veterans taught them, "Never forget what they did to us. Never forget the shame. Never forget the fire that burns inside you." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, alien species whispered. They spoke of humanity in hushed voices. "The exiles are weak," some said. "The exiles are desperate," others claimed. But one or two voices, quiet but sharp, warned, "Be careful. Humans do not die in silence. They rise in silence." Back on Earth, a girl named Elena, the same cadet who had once whispered to the stars, found herself standing at a secret gathering. She listened as an engineer revealed new starship designs, not copies of Council ships, but something new, something different, machines shaped by both human will and stolen alien knowledge. Elena's heart raced. She asked, "Why show me this? I am only a cadet." The engineer looked at her with tired eyes. "Because it is the young who must carry this fire. The old have already been burned too many times, but the Council was not blind. They sent drones to watch Earth from orbit. They sent spies to spread fear. In markets, strange voices whispered, 'You cannot rise, you cannot fight, you are doomed,' and many believed them. Still, in the shadows, the fire grew. Then came the breaking point. A group of desperate workers hijacked an old cargo ship. They tried to leave Earth, to find food and supplies from abandoned colonies, but at the edge of the system, they were stopped by a galactic patrol ship. The patrol opened fire without warning. The cargo ship burned in the void. All lives lost. When the news reached Earth, despair turned to fury. Millions marched in the streets. They no longer begged. They no longer cried. They shouted, "If they wish us to die in exile, then we will live in defiance." The scientists finally revealed their secret. The broken map from the signal had been repaired. It showed a path, not to Council space, but to a cluster of forgotten worlds, ancient ruins waiting in the dark. The message was clear. There were resources, there was technology, there was hope. In a hidden hangar, the first secret ship stood ready, patched together with human steel and stolen alien designs. Its engines roared for the first time. Soldiers, engineers, and dreamers gathered to watch it rise. They knew if the Council discovered it, destruction would come. But they also knew if they stayed still, death would still arrive slowly. The ship lifted into the night sky, breaking through clouds, disappearing into the stars. It was humanity's first act of defiance, the first step away from despair, the first step toward something greater. Elena stood among the crowd. Her eyes following the trail of fire left by the ship, she whispered, "They thought exile would end us, but this is only the beginning and far beyond." In the darkness of space, the signal waited, the ruins waited, and something unknown stirred. The rising flame, the secret ship that left Earth, did not return for many months. People waited in silence, fearing the Council had destroyed it. Some whispered that it had vanished into the dark, but then, one night, a signal broke through the static. A human voice echoed across hidden channels. "We found it." The message carried coordinates. It spoke of ruins beyond known space, ancient structures floating above a dead world, machines older than any council record. Human explorers had walked among halls built by hands long gone. They found vaults filled with knowledge, strange energy cores, and weapons the council had forbidden for centuries. Back on Earth, the news spread in secret circles, not to the public but to those who worked in shadows, engineers, scientists, and commanders. They studied the recovered technology with burning eyes. "This is not exile anymore," one whispered. "This is rebirth." Factories hidden deep under mountains roared to life again. Starship frames were built in silence, powered by hybrid engines made from human steel and alien cores. Ships were no longer fragile traders. They became predators of the void, sharp, fast, and deadly. Elena, the cadet, was called to one of these hidden shipyards. She stood before a vessel unlike any she had seen, black hulls that bent light, weapons that hummed with strange energy. The commander looked at her and said, "You wanted to rise, now you must help lead." Meanwhile, in the galaxy, rumors spread like wildfire. Council ships near human borders began to vanish. Patrols reported strange readings. Scouts whispered about shadows moving in space. One alien captain sent his last message: "Their ships, they are not what they were before." And then silence. The council grew nervous. Meetings turned heated. Some demanded immediate war. Others urged caution, but pride made them blind. "Humans are weak," they insisted. "They are exiles. They cannot rise." Yet unease spread like poison through their ranks. On Earth, ordinary people who once starved now worked in secret pride. Farmers supplied food for hidden fleets. Miners dug deep into mountains for rare metals. Even children learned codes to hide messages. Humanity had turned into one single machine, not divided by nations anymore, but united by survival and vengeance. The first test of their power came sooner than expected. A council frigate entered human space, believing it could patrol freely. But as it neared the asteroid belt, hidden turrets came alive. Beams of light cut through the dark, human warships uncloaked like predators from the shadows. The frigate tried to flee, but within minutes it was torn apart. For the first time in history, humans had destroyed a council ship inside their own exile, and they did it with silence. No broadcasts, no celebration, only determination. The captured wreck was pulled into a secret dock. Scientists swarmed over it, stripping technology, learning, adapting. The Council's weapons now became fuel for the rising human fleets. Elena sat with the engineers, studying alien star charts recovered from the frigate. Her eyes caught a route leading to another cluster of forgotten systems. She whispered, "If we reach these worlds first, we will grow faster than they can imagine." But the Council was beginning to notice. Their spies reported missing ships. Their patrols stopped returning. One elder delegate growled, "They were supposed to be broken, but they are sharpening themselves instead." Still, arrogance blinded them. They prepared only small fleets, believing humans could not stand against true power. What they did not know was that humanity had already begun forming alliances. Small alien races who had suffered under the Council secretly contacted human envoys. They offered intelligence, supplies, even warriors. One envoy bowed before a human commander and said, "You are the fire we have been waiting for." And the fire spread deep within the ruins. The explorers uncovered something far greater, a weapon sealed inside an ancient vault. It was not complete, but its fragments showed devastating power. Energy fields capable of cutting through entire fleets. The scientists trembled as they touched it. "If we master this, no empire will stand against us." But danger was rising too. The Council sent a larger force this time, dozens of ships to patrol near Sol. They expected fear. They expected surrender. Instead, they met silence. On a cold night, in a hidden command room, human captains prepared, maps lit the walls. Elena stood among them, her young face hard with resolve. "Tonight," she said, "we stop being exiles. Tonight we show them what it means to cast us aside." In orbit, the human fleet waited, black hulls blending with stars, engines silent, weapons charged. The Council fleet crossed the line, unaware of the storm waiting in the dark, and then, with a single coded word, The trap was sprung. The first clash. The Council fleet entered Sol space with confidence. Their ships gleamed under distant sunlight. 30 vessels, each armed with weapons that had once made empires tremble. Their commanders expected an easy show of force. They thought humans would hide, surrender, or beg. But the void was silent. Too silent. Inside a hidden command center deep under Earth's surface, human officers watched the fleet on their screens. Every heartbeat echoed like thunder in the room. Elena stood among them, her hand tight against the console. She whispered, "This is it. This is where exile ends." The human fleet was waiting, cloaked in darkness near the asteroid belt, ships painted black, hulls bending light. They were smaller, fewer, but they carried new weapons powered by alien cores and human fire. The order was given in one simple word: ignite. The first human strike came without warning. Mines hidden in the asteroid field exploded in chains. Fire lit the void. Council ships staggered, shields cracking under the sudden storm. Before they could react, human warships uncloaked, engines roaring, weapons blazing. The battle had begun. Council commanders shouted in panic, "Where did they get these ships? How are they cloaked?" But there was no answer. Only human vessels moving like hunters through the dark, striking, vanishing, striking again. Elena piloted a small strike craft, her eyes sharp, her hands steady. She led a squadron diving between massive Council cruisers. Their lasers cut deep, sparks flew, explosions rippled across alien hulls. One cruiser split apart, burning like a falling star. On Earth, people gathered in secret shelters. Radios crackled with broken voices of the battle. They held their breath, praying, fearing, waiting. They knew their future hung in this single night. The Council fought back hard. Their heavy cannons fired beams that tore through asteroids. One human frigate was caught, shredded into dust. The names of its crew whispered in sorrow by those watching. But even in loss, the humans pressed forward, every death feeding their fury. And then came the moment that changed everything. The flagship of the Council fleet, a massive dreadnought, locked onto Earth itself, charging its primary weapon, a beam powerful enough to shatter continents. The Council commander sneered, "Let this exile become extinction," but before the weapon fired, a human warship emerged from the shadows, small compared to the dreadnought, but carrying something new. An ancient weapon recovered from the ruins, half human, half alien, experimental and unstable. The captain's voice rang clear across the comms. For Earth, a blinding lance of energy struck the dreadnought. Its shields screamed, its armor melted like wax. The giant vessel shook, cracking apart under the impossible force. Explosions rippled across its hull until it split in two, drifting dead in the void. Silence followed. Silence heavier than the battle itself. The Council fleet staggered, commanders stunned, soldiers frozen. Never before had humans destroyed a ship of that scale. Never before had exiles turned hunters into prey. Panic spread through the Council fleet. Some tried to retreat, others fired wildly. But the human fleet pressed the attack, striking with precision, tearing apart ship after ship until the proud invaders became broken wrecks floating in the black. When dawn touched Earth, the battle was over. In the command center, officers stared at the screens in disbelief. Elena's hands trembled as she pulled off her flight helmet. Her eyes burned with both exhaustion and triumph. She whispered, "We did it. We truly did it." News spread fast, whispers carried across the galaxy. The exiles have destroyed a Council fleet. Species living under Council rule trembled, some in fear, some in secret joy. Because if humans could fight back, maybe others could too. On the Council world, delegates shouted in fury and fear. One slammed his fist. "We underestimated them," another whispered with dread. "Exile was our mistake. We have created something far worse than we feared back on Earth." There was no celebration, only quiet resolve, because they knew this was just the beginning. The Council would return, with more ships, with greater fury, but humanity had tasted victory, and they would never bow again. That night, Elena stood once more on the rooftop. Of her home, she looked at the stars glowing above and said softly, "We are no longer exiles. We are becoming an empire." And in the far reaches of the galaxy, signals flickered again. The ancient ruins stirred, as if something greater had awakened, something that would soon test even the rising human empire. The empire reborn. The wreckage of the Council fleet still floated in Sol's orbit, twisted metal burning like dying stars. The battle was over, but its echo shook the entire galaxy. On distant worlds, alien leaders whispered in fear. Humans destroyed a dreadnought. Some said it was impossible. Others said it was only the beginning. Smaller species, long oppressed by the Council, sent secret messages to Earth, messages filled with hope. If you rise, we will rise with you. On Earth, the people gathered, not in fear this time, but in unity. Cities that had once burned with riots now shone with torches of pride. Voices rose together. We are no longer exiles. We are no longer broken. In hidden halls beneath the mountains, leaders, soldiers, scientists, and workers stood side by side. There were no nations anymore, only one banner. Humanity. A decision was made, a declaration was written, and for the first time since exile, it was broadcast openly across the galaxy. The screen showed the image of a human commander, his voice steady, his words heavy with power. You cast us out, you tried to bury us, but in the ashes we found fire. Today, humanity stands not as an exile, but as an empire. From this day forward, we are the sovereign human dominion. The words spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of the galaxy. Friends and enemies alike listened, some with joy, some with terror, but no one ignored it. In the command center, Elena stood with the fleet captains, her young face hard but proud. She looked at the map of the stars and whispered, "Every world they denied us will now become ours." Ships launched from Earth, no longer in secret, but in open defiance. Fleets spread across unclaimed systems, planting the flag of the new human empire. Colonies once abandoned were reclaimed, their people rescued, their homes rebuilt. And then came the unexpected. Envoys from smaller alien species arrived at Earth. They bent their heads and offered alliance. One said, "We were slaves under the Council, but we see hope in your fire. Let us stand with you." Humanity accepted them, not as servants, but as equals, because every ally meant strength, every alliance meant growth. But the Council did not remain silent. In their great halls, chaos reigned. Some demanded all-out war, others feared it would only fuel the human rise. One elder whispered with dread, "By casting them out, we created a monster, and now it is too late to chain it." Still, the Council prepared, forging vast fleets, gathering armies, but fear had already broken their unity. Back in the ruins where the signal had first led humanity, explorers uncovered something greater. A final chamber sealed behind layers of traps. Inside lay an archive. Knowledge of the ancient builders who had once ruled the stars before the Council even existed. It was not just weapons this time, but histories, blueprints, secrets of power that could change the galaxy forever. Scientists trembled as they read, realizing that exile had not only forced humanity to rise, but had placed destiny in their hands. And yet, hidden in the archive was a warning, a message left by the ancients. Power can build, but power can also consume. Beware, for the fire you carry may burn the galaxy itself. Elena stood before the archive, her hand brushing against the ancient symbols, her heart heavy. She whispered, "We will not be their slaves, but neither will we become their monsters." Still, she knew war was coming. The Council would strike again, harder than before, and the human empire would need to stand ready. On the day of the Empire's first anniversary, the skies above Earth filled with ships, not to invade, but to protect. Fleets of black hulls, glowing engines, and proud banners, billions watched from the ground as the armada stretched across the heavens. In the great ceremony, the leader of humanity raised his hand, his voice thundered, "We are the empire born from exile, the fire that cannot be extinguished, the voice that cannot be silenced. And to the Council we say this, you feared us in chains, now face us in freedom." Cheers shook the earth, and in the deep halls of the Council fear grew, because they realized a truth too late. Exile had not broken humanity. Exile had forged them. Exile had turned a scattered people into a force that could challenge empires. The final image of the ceremony burned across every world. Elena, standing among the new Imperial fleet, looking at the stars, her eyes sharp, her voice clear. They thought exile was our ending, but it was only the beginning. And now, we rise. The galaxy trembled, for the age of humanity had begun.